Many videos on this channel explain the big picture of prophetic signs that the righteous Christian God of the Bible used to point to October 17, 2023. This video will explain the extremely important prophetic signs that occurred on October 17th. These signs include the rocket that hit the hospital in Gaza, which caused the cancellation of the four-party summit right before Joe Biden boarded his Air Force One plane for the Middle East. Many other important signs and connections will be explained in this must-watch video. God has also used the prophetic signs on October 17th to predict the date that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on February 10th, 2024. The date that this video is posted proves that this prediction is being made ahead of time, as does this time-stamped email and forensic notes PDF document. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. As can be seen in this email, the prediction that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash so that Barack Obama can become the president again has been known since at least August 5th, 2021. This video explains some of the amazing and important prophetic signs that the righteous Christian God of the Bible used to point to October 17th, 2023 regarding the prediction that U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash. Here is the email and forensic notes document that indicate that the prediction for Harris's plane crash on October 17, 2023 was known since July 6, 2023. In fact, it has been known since October of 2020 that Harris will die in a plane crash so that Barack Obama can become the president again. God pointed to October 17th ahead of October 17th, and so it was believed that Harris's predicted plane crash would be on October 17th. As explained in the Gaza explosion video, the extremely profound prophetic signs that occurred on October 17th, 10/17, revealed adding 3 sets of 7 days to reach November 7th, 11/7. The signs on 11/7 in turn revealed a trail of signs that continued on through other dates, and this trail of signs is predicted to ultimately end on February 2nd or 3rd, 2024. This trail of signs that I am referring to is explained in the must-watch Gaza explosion video. That said, October 17th was the bigger date. October 17th was supremely important, and the signs on 10/17 pointed to Zechariah chapter 1 verse 17 in the Bible. The Gaza explosion video explains how the signs on 10/17 pointed to Zechariah 1:17. Zechariah 1:17 was also hinted at with the date 11/7, which again was a prophetic 3 sets of 7 days after 10/17. Furthermore, from 11/7, the trail of signs regarding Harris's predicted plane crash continued on to the date 1/7, and this too was another hint at Zechariah 1:17. The reason why God used October 17th, the date 10/17, to point to Zechariah 1:17 is that this important prophecy in Zechariah chapter 1 in the Bible is dated, and the date of this prophecy is recorded in Zechariah chapter 1 verse 7, 1:7, and the date 10/17 also hints at this. The prophet Zechariah recorded the precise date on which he received the prophecy from God. The date was the 24th day of the month of Shavat in the Hebrew calendar. This year in 2024, the 24th day of Shavat begins at sunset on February 2nd and goes to sunset February 3rd. In other words, God used many different profound trails of signs to lead to October 17th, 2023, in order to point to the 24th day of the month of Shevat, which in 2024 begins on February 2nd. On February 2nd, Kamala Harris will visit South Carolina, the 8th state to join the Union. To learn more about the very important prophetic relevance of Harris's visit to the 8th state, watch the important and must-watch Amelia Earhart prophecy video. 8 days after Harris will visit the 8th state will be February 10th, the date on which it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash, which will be the anniversary of the shoot-down of the Israeli F-16 fighter jet over northern Israel by Iran and Syria on February 10, 2018, which was the 24th day of the month of Shevat in 2018. To confirm his signs, patterns, and connections, God pairs the numbers 44 and 23 together, as the Antichrist is the 44th president and the basketball president who wore jersey 23 in high school. Barack Obama will become the president again as a result of the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash. 8 days from Harris's visit to the 8th state is the equivalent of 4 plus 4 days, which hints at the number 44. February 10th will be exactly 2 times 3 years after the Israeli F-16 fighter jet was shot down, and 2 times 3 years hints at the number 23, and the F-16 hints at 4 times 4 and the number 44. The main story on October 17th was the rocket strike of a hospital in Gaza that caused the cancellation of the 4-party summit talk in the Middle East right before Joe Biden boarded his Air Force One plane for the Middle East for this talk. On this same day, Kamala Harris flew her Air Force Two plane for a talk at a university in northern Arizona near the Four Corners Monument. The 4-party summit talk between leaders of 4 nations and Harris's talk at a university in the Four Corners region pointed to the 4 horns and 4 craftsmen that are described in the apocalyptic prophecy in the 1st chapter of the book of Zechariah in the Bible. This is because in Bible prophecy, a horn is symbolic of a leader of a nation, and a college is where a trade or skill or knowledge for a profession is learned. Northern Arizona University has 7 academic colleges, and Kamala Harris is the 49th vice president. This hints at 7 and 7 times 7, because 49 equals 7 times 7. This is a symbolic 3 sets of 7. This parallels the book of Joshua and the description of the Israelites' march around the walls of security of the ancient city of Jericho once per day for 7 days, followed on the 7th day with marching 7 times while blowing 7 trumpets, after which the walls of security then collapsed in God's judgment. In the book of Joshua, it was in fact a 7 days followed by a 7 and 7. It was a symbolic 3 sets of 7. In their symbolic 3 sets of 7 around the walls of Jericho, the Israelites were led by Joshua. Likewise, 7 days after the 49th vice president flew on her plane to visit 7 academic colleges was October 24th, and the day that 2 planes collided with each other, clipping their wings, at the airport 7 miles from downtown Houston in Harris County in Texas, which was the same day that the agency in Gaza confirmed that there had been 700 deaths from Israel's air raid in the prior 24 hours, the deadliest 24-hour period in Gaza thus far in the conflict. This followed Israel's deadliest day when Hamas invaded and killed 700 plus 700 Israelis. This hinted at adding 7 plus 7 days after 700 Gazans were killed to reach November 7th, the date of a prophetic car crash pileup on the I-10 highway, and the U.S. Interstate I-10 hints at 110, the age at which Joshua died. This is a symbolic 7 followed by 7 and 7. Also, the dates 10:17 and 11:7 hint at the number 117, and 117 is 110 plus 7, and in the book of Joshua, Joshua led the Israelites for 7 days around the walls of security of Jericho, and Joshua died at the age of 110. It was Joshua who led the Israelites in a symbolic 3 sets of 7 before they blew trumpets and the walls of security came crashing down. On November 7th, Prime Minister Netanyahu, the leader of Israel, which is symbolic for Joshua, the leader of the Israelites, announced, in other words, trumpeted, that the Israeli forces had crossed over the perimeter around Gaza City and were deep inside Gaza City fighting Hamas, which was symbolism for the Israelites taking the city of Jericho after encircling Jericho with their symbolic 3 sets of 7. Also, on November 7th, there was 1 death in a car pileup crash on the I-10 highway just outside the city of New Orleans, Louisiana, due to a superfog event. The 1 death on the I-10 highway hints at Joshua, who died at the age of 110. The crash was just outside the city of New Orleans, which hints at the Israelites just outside the walls of the city of Jericho, and New Orleans and Louisiana are French names that hint at St. Louis, also a French name, where it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash. Superfog is symbolism for not being able to see what is in the immediate future and not being able to see that the Antichrist Barack Obama is about to become the president again in the immediate future due to Harris's plane crash. The prophetic signs that hinted at Joshua on November 7th confirm adding an additional 3 sets of 7 days to November 7th to reach the date that Harris flew to a funeral for the former First Lady Rosalind Carter in the 4th state, where 4 former First Ladies were in attendance 40 days before the prophetic sign on January 7th, the date 17, which is in turn 9 plus 9 plus 9 days to the date 23, which hints at 23, and God pairs 9 and 23 together to confirm his signs and connections, and he also pairs 9 and 110 together to confirm his signs and connections, and so this 9 plus 9 plus 9 days connection also pairs with the I-10 highway, which again hints at 110, the age at which Joshua died. This current conflict regarding Israel and Hamas began when Hamas crashed through the border wall of security and killed 700 plus 700 people. One reason why these prophetic signs related to Harris's plane crash parallel these signs involving Hamas is because the name Hamas hints at Harris. The first chapter of Zechariah also mentions 4 horsemen among myrtle trees. The number 37 hints at 3 sets of 7, and this is why the rocket struck the hospital in Gaza exactly 37 weeks after the Chinese spy balloon crossed over the northern border wall of security with Canada and into the US, which is the 49th latitudinal line, The 49th parallel hints at 7 times 7, and the 49th vice president before being struck down by a rocket off the shore of Myrtle Beach, North Carolina. The Zechariah prophecy that mentions myrtle trees also mentions God's mercy and promise to restore Israel after its 70 years of captivity in Babylon. The Chinese spy balloon was struck down by a rocket next to Myrtle Beach exactly 70% of a year, which hints at 70 years before the rocket struck the hospital in Gaza, which canceled the four-party summit, which alluded to the prophecy of 4 horns, 4 horsemen, and myrtle trees. This 70% of a year from the rocket strike off of Myrtle Beach to the rocket that struck the hospital on October 17th, which hinted at the prophecy in Zechariah chapter 1 that regards myrtle trees, is a prophecy that was dated on the 24th day of the month of Shavat, and this reveals the date that Kamala Harris's plane will be struck by God with lightning, turbulence, and a bird strike, and then predicted to crash near the I-70 highway in St. Louis, a city over which passed the 70-mile-wide path of totality of the Great American Eclipse, when it also passed over 7 cities named Salem, which hints at Jerusalem, almost 7 years ago. The reason why God pointed to October 17th in advance of October 17th is that the date 1017 hints at the important verse in the book of Zechariah, the prophetic book that speaks of 4 horns, 4 craftsmen, and 4 horsemen among myrtle trees, which is chapter 1, verse 17. Cry out again, thus says the Lord of hosts, my cities shall again overflow with prosperity, and the Lord will again comfort Zion, and again choose Jerusalem. When the prediction for Harris's plane crash comes to pass, it will prove that Islam, Jehovah's Witness, and the theology among Catholics and Protestants that says that the Church has replaced Israel are all false and wicked deception from Satan. Make no mistake, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove this. This isn't even scratching the surface of the importance of the prophetic signs that occurred on October 17th, 2023. So make sure you watch the GAZA explosion video. All right, welcome. I have made countless videos explaining how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections was overwhelmingly pointing to the date October 17th, 2023, and specifically as the date that it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash. However, God was not finished establishing his trail of signs that is leading to the date that it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash, which is now predicted to be on October 24th, 2023, 7 days after October 17th. This video will explain the truly amazing prophetic signs and the meaning of it, the meaning of them, that occurred on October 17th, 2023. It is amazing. I recommend highly that you listen to all of this video. And to explain the story regarding what God was communicating through the prophetic signs on October 17th, I'm just going to read an email that I wrote to friends explaining everything. And so here we begin. The amazing signs on October 17th, 2023. Prior to October 17th, it was known that God was pointing to this date with an overwhelming amount of confirmations. It was predicted that he was pointing to the date that Kamala Harris would die in a plane crash. Instead, October 17th, 2023 was another step in the trail of signs leading to the date that Harris is predicted to die in a plane crash, which is now believed to be 7 days later on October 24th, 2023. October 17th, or on October 17th, we received the expected prophetic signs related to her predicted airplane crash. The biggest news story of the day was the explosion at the hospital in Gaza and how this caused the cancellation of the four-party summit in Amman, Jordan. The big story was how this news of the cancellation of the summit came right before President Joe Biden boarded his Air Force One plane for the Middle East and the summit. In other words, the story of the day focused on the president and his plane. Images of this story are of Biden boarding his plane. As he was boarding his plane, reporters yelled the question, "Will you still visit Jordan?" The other expected prophetic sign related to Harris's predicted plane crash was her plane trip in her Air Force Two plane to the 48th state. End Times Bible prophecy describes the world seeking to divide Israel and to destroy it. It also speaks of the Antichrist, who will broker a deal or a peace treaty and then will persecute Jews in Israel and Jerusalem. This Antichrist is Barack Obama, who will become the 48th president after Harris dies in a plane crash. This is the reason why she will die in a plane crash. This is what was hinted at with Joe Biden's departure on his Air Force One plane for the Middle East in his effort to secure peace on the same day that Kamala Harris flew in her Air Force Two plane to the 48th state. Through the cancellation of the four-party summit in Amman, Jordan, God pointed to Zechariah chapter 1, the book of Zechariah in the Bible, which is an apocalyptic prophecy, which means it is filled with symbolism, and regards 4 horsemen, 4 horns, and 4 craftsmen. The four-party summit alluded to the 4 horns, because in Bible prophecy, this is what a horn symbolizes. It symbolizes a king or an army. The 4 horns are symbolism for the nations of the world. That's what the 4 horns symbolize in this prophecy and another prophecy, as I'm about to say. In history, it was the Babylonian, Persian, Greek, and Roman empires that ruled over Jerusalem after the Jews rebelled against God. This history is alluded to in the apocalyptic prophecies in the book of Daniel and Revelation. Through the prophet Zechariah, God explains that he will restore Jerusalem and the Holy Temple, and that his people will then dwell securely in the land forever. The beginning of the book of Zechariah mentions 4 horsemen, 4 horns, and 4 craftsmen, and also a man who will use a measuring line to begin the rebuilding of the temple and Jerusalem. The four-party summit in Amman hinted at the 4 horns and a man with the measuring line. Amman hints at a man. So, in other words, what I am saying here is that this sign we are talking about, with this cancellation of the four-party summit, which alludes to the history which is described in Bible prophecy of these 4 symbolic empires that ruled over Jerusalem, which is in our day also symbolizes symbolism for the times of the Gentiles, which will end at the complete restoration of Jerusalem and Israel, which is when Lord Jesus Christ will return to Jerusalem at his second coming and then begin his 1,000 years of peace on earth, and him dwelling in the temple on the Temple Mount. This is the ultimate climax of history, which is climaxing with the end of the times of the Gentiles, which is symbolized here in Bible prophecy with the four horns, that prior to that moment will be working for the Antichrist and Satan, attempting to prevent this ultimate climax to history with their persecution of Jews in Israel. That is, in a nutshell, what is going on. Okay, so Amman is in Jordan, and this is why the next biggest story of the day on October 17th was the vote on Jim Jordan as the Republican Speaker of the House. The story was about how 20 Republicans voted against Jordan, which meant that the Democratic minority leader Hakeem Jeffries received more votes than Jordan. Jeffries received 212 votes, and this hinted at how Jeffries is from New York City, which has the area code 212, as in 212 votes. This story of his 212 votes on October 17th is because October 17th is 2 times 23 days before the date 12/2, which in reverse is 2/12, and that's how the date is written in the rest of the world outside of the US. The date it is predicted that a suitcase nuke or dirty bomb or bombs will explode in New York City. 2 times 23 hints at 223, the 48th prime number. Obama will become the 48th president. And this 2 times 23 days connection begins with a prophetic explosion, the explosion in Gaza. Jeffries was first elected to the U.S. House in 2012, which also hints at 212, the area code of Manhattan. Jeffries represents the 8th district of New York, which hints at 4+4, and Obama, the 44th president. Jeffries was briefly the first black Speaker of the House, which hints at the first black president. Jeffries was born on August 4th, the 216th day of the calendar year, and 216 equals 6 times 6 times 6. And his birth was exactly 9 years after Obama was born on August 4th. 9 equals God's judgment. The number 9 is the most important number in God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel. As from the Bible, the number 9 symbolizes God's judgment. Obama, the unconstitutional president, because of course he was born in Kenya, who will do away with the Constitution, and by the way, he was the president from 2009 until 2017, and Constitution Day in the U.S. is the date 9/17. Obama was born, the unconstitutional president, was born exactly 9 years, so we talked about 9 years after Obama's birth was the birth of Jeffries. Exactly 9 years before Obama's birth was the first law that was passed in Puerto Rico, which is U.S. territory, under their new constitution, which declared Constitution Day. Obama was the first president to visit Puerto Rico as a sitting president in literally 50 years, which is prophetic because of the 50 years periods in Leviticus 25, since President Kennedy. Kennedy died in a vehicle while in office. Obama will become the president again after Harris will die in office in a plane, a type of vehicle. All of this is to say that this story regarding Jim Jordan on the day that the 4-party summit in Amman, Jordan, was canceled, is confirmation that the signs on this day point to the 44th president brokering a deal in the Middle East as the Antichrist. From the day that the spy balloon was shot down next to Myrtle Beach, it is 70% of a year, almost exactly 70% of a year, to the 4-party summit sign that on October 17th, that points to the 4 horns in Zechariah chapter 1, which also includes a mention of a man among myrtle trees and a mention of God's mercy for Israel after 70 years. which is in turn confirmation for adding 7 days to October 17th to get the date it is predicted that Harris's plane will be struck and fall from the sky, like the spy balloon that was struck by a rocket and fell from the sky, which connects with 70% of a year to the rocket from the sky that struck the hospital in Gaza. So in other words, this is amazing. We have this 70% of a year connection between the Myrtle Beach sign, which was a rocket and a strike sign, a fall from the high place, to October 17th, and the day of the Four Summit sign, which points directly to Zechariah chapter 1, which is about the man among the myrtle trees, and a mention of God's mercy for Israel in his restoration for Israel after 70 years. They were in captivity in Babylon for 70 years. This is the time that Zechariah is writing his prophecy. That said, the writings and prophecies of Zechariah overlap between commentary on his time and the end of the age and the day of the Lord at the end times, and the restoration of Israel in the end times, which is what is currently happening, hence the disaster in Gaza currently at this time, and this prophetic four-party summit, for example. The cancellation of the four-party summit right before Joe Biden boarded his Air Force One plane alluded to the four horns in Bible prophecy, and the four horns are mentioned in context of four craftsmen and as well four horsemen. This hints at the 44th president is the Antichrist. The 44th president is the basketball president who wore jersey 23 in high school and will become the president again in 2023. This is why 200 to 300 people, which hints at 23, died in the explosion at the hospital in Gaza, and why there are 23 hospitals in Gaza, which is made up of 2.3 million people. Because God pairs 23 and 44 together, as I'm about to say, one of the main stories regarding the catastrophe in Gaza is the conditions at its hospitals. So that's a part of the story of Gaza, and we have a focus on the hospital in this sign. Not only does God pair the number 23 with 44 in order to confirm the signs and connections and reveal the identity of the Antichrist, because of what I mentioned, the 44th president wearing jersey 23 and becoming the president again in 2023, but also God pairs 9 and 23 together for this purpose as well, because he became the president in 2009. This is why 200 to 300 people died in an explosion in one of the 23 hospitals that serve 2.3 million people on the same day that Kamala Harris visited her 9th school on her Fight for Our Freedoms college tour. Okay, so that's a pairing of 9 and 23, and it is amazing confirmation of the significance of what we were talking about here. In Bible prophecy, the Antichrist's number is 666, 666. The 200 to 300 deaths at one of the 23 hospitals that serve 2.3 million people occurred 6 plus 6 plus 6 days after the opening of the new Sphere Entertainment Center that is on 6 plus 6 plus 6 acres in Las Vegas, that has a capacity seating of 6,000 plus 6,000 plus 6,000 people seats. The Sphere cost $2.3 billion and has 23 executive suites. So in other words, the $2.3 billion and the 23 executive suites connect with these 18 6 plus 6 plus 6 numbers to the 200 to 300 deaths in one of the 23 hospitals that serve 2.3 million people. In this sign, and this is, by the way, how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter, as the Bible says is required, and this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination, and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. And one simple way in which he, by the way, would provide a second witness, if we think about it, is through pairing certain numbers together, as I was explaining. In this sign from God, sphere symbolizes the world, and the opening of sphere was U2's Achtung Baby concert. Achtung is German for attention. The Lord is saying to the world, attention, I am restoring Israel. And then you will know that I am the Lord, which is a refrain that Zechariah repeats throughout his prophetic writings in the book of Zechariah. And then you will know that I am the Lord. And the book of Zechariah is about the restoration of Israel. And then you will know that I am the Lord. By the way, this is how I came to know that the Lord is the God of the Bible. It is through the restoration of Israel and the precise fulfillment of Bible prophecy regarding the restoration of Israel. It cannot be that that the God of the Bible isn't true because of the fulfilled prophecy and the ongoing fulfillment of the restoration of Israel. The fact that the Jews are even still a people is a miracle. But if you know more about how the restoration occurred, it is also a miracle. Okay, so which is why the explosion in Gaza on October 17th pointed to the book of Zechariah. The explosion in Gaza on 10/17 is also part of the trail of signs leading to the predicted explosions in New York City and Damascus, and also the predicted explosion on the sun, which is also symbolized by sphere. But this will be explained in other videos, and is explained in other videos. The explosion in Gaza was exactly 126 months after the explosion in West Texas on April 17th, 2013. 126 months hints at 1,260 days, which is mentioned 7 times in Bible prophecy as the period of the Antichrist. The name of the city West, that's the name of this city. Simply, it is named West. The name of the city West points to Biden, the leader of the West, flying from west to east to the Middle East 126 months later on October 17th. 126 months after the explosion in West. This is also why on October 17th, 2023, Kamala Harris flew out west to Flagstaff, Arizona, in the 48th state, and then flew back again to Washington from west to east. On the day of the massive explosion at the fertilizer plant in West Texas, the largest ever disaster preparedness drill in northern Texas was coincidentally being conducted within 50 miles of the disaster, and they were preparing for the same type of disaster that actually occurred at the same time. 2 days earlier, 2 days prior to the West Texas explosion, was the Boston bombing explosion. And the coincidence regarding this is that the regional FBI and police departments were planning a disaster preparedness drill for a month later for the exact same type of scenario, a backpack bomb and then a manhunt. 3 people died in Boston, and then 2 days later, 15 people died in West Texas in these explosions, for a total of 18, which is 6 plus 6 plus 6, and hints at the number of the Antichrist, 666. These explosions are also part of the trail of signs leading to the predicted explosion in New York City. The prophetic sign on April 17, 2013, in West Texas, regarded an explosion, a disaster, and a hospital. Likewise, exactly 126 months later, was a sign involving an explosion, a disaster, and a hospital. One of the hospitals that the 200 injured in the West Texas explosion were taken to, and by the way, there were 200 killed, 200 to 300 anyway, in the explosion in Gaza. Okay, so one of the hospitals that the 200 injured in the explosion in West Texas, were taken to the Parkland Hospital in Dallas, which is the hospital that the 35th president was taken to after he was shot as his car was about to enter the on-ramp for the I-35 highway. 10/17/2023 is 35 days before it is predicted that Obama will become the president again after Harris's death in a disaster. Harris's flight path back to Washington from west to east was exactly 37 weeks after the China spy balloon first entered the U.S., and the story of this balloon was its path across the nation from west to east. Likewise, the story of the eclipse in 2017 across the nation was the path of totality that went from west to east across the nation. The eclipse passed over St. Louis, as did Harris's flight path on October 17th, and her crash is predicted to be in St. Louis. The eclipse exited the U.S. over the Carolinas, and the spy balloon, was shot down after it exited the U.S. off the coast near the shore of Myrtle Beach, North Carolina. Myrtle Beach hints at the horseman that is said to be amongst the myrtle trees in the first chapter of the book of Zechariah, the chapter that also mentions the 4 horns, which is why the spy balloon first entered the U.S. and then shot down next to Myrtle Beach, exactly 37 weeks before the 4-party 4 Horns Summit story. The reason for 37 weeks is because the balloon crossed the border wall of security from Canada, and in the book of Joshua, the Israelites enacted a symbolic 3 sets of 7 before the walls of security collapsed in God's judgment. 37 hints at 3 sets of 7. And so we are talking about America's walls of security collapsing in God's judgment here, and that is what is hinted at with the crossing of the spy balloon over the border wall of security and this 37 weeks connection. Furthermore, by the way, also Gaza itself is this whole disaster is symbolism for the walls of security collapsing, because it was the Hamas terrorists that busted through the walls of security into Israel. It was an invasion through the border wall of security. And so that's also hinted back at the symbolism for America's walls of security being invaded and collapsing in God's judgment as well. On the same day that the spy balloon crossed the border wall of security into the U.S., it was reported that Alec Baldwin was being charged with manslaughter for his handling of the gun while filming the movie Rust. Baldwin was later cleared in April, but exactly 37 weeks after he was first charged, the prosecutors announced on October 17th that he will again be charged. SHOs from guns are symbolic of the CVD disease SHOs. You know what I'm talking about. If you can't read it because you're only listening to the video, you know what I'm talking about. The SHOs. From guns are symbolic of the SHOs from the thing, which is the mark of the Antichrist that is described in Bible prophecy. And the purpose and the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction being made in this video is to prove this. There is no more debate. It is the mark of the Antichrist in its current form. It is not a supposed precursor to the mark of the Antichrist. It does not need anything else, nor does it need a new age, a dispensational age. Anyway, after supposedly all Christians will be raptured. The injections contain metals, and everything that I'm saying in this video will be proven to be true, and this is the reason why God has made this prediction and is giving me a voice through this prediction. It will be proven to be true when the prediction comes to pass. The things contain metals. The mark of the Antichrist contains metals, which is the prophetic reason for the name of the movie, Rust. This theme of slaughter from the Antichrist's enforcement of necessary, you know the word, CVD things, is why on October 17th, 2023, the trailer for the new movie about the Holocaust, The Zone of Interest, was officially released. On October 17th, 2023, the Gaza Strip was the zone of interest for the world, which is what is hinted at with the name of this movie about the Holocaust, The Zone of Interest. The Antichrist will lead a genocide and a new Holocaust on their enemies, the people of God. The Antichrist will lock people down in a zone and then slaughter them. This will happen in Judea and also in America and elsewhere. This is the symbolism contained in the CVD lock, you know what, into place in 2020. And it is the symbolism contained in the trapped people in a zone in Gaza. I hope I'm making myself clear here. This is astounding. This is what the trapped people in Gaza are symbolism for. So God's signs are symbols, right? They're symbolism. It's not literal, right? When we talk about trapped people in Gaza, it's not only about the people in Gaza. There's symbolism there for Americans, okay? And I know Americans aren't Gazans, but see what I'm saying? It's symbolism, right? And what we are talking about is the Antichrist and a zone of interest locking people into place. You know the word I'm trying to use instead, or trying to replace there. Okay, so that's also huge. Think about that. The prophetic significance of the lock into place thing that happened in 2020 is in fact God communicating symbolism for the coming genocide and Holocaust of locking people into place in a zone and slaughtering them. That's what's going to happen in one form or another. You can use your imagination as well. Okay, so the name of the company that produced this film, The Zone of Interest, is A24. And this is because the genocide in the Antichrist system will be in 2024. In the 1976 horror movie, Carrie, regarded as one of the classic horror movies, if you are into that. But for example, it was inducted into the National Registry as being culturally significant, etc. It's, in other words, a very important movie in American cultural history, if you will. All right? And so the reason for saying that is that it is more evidence that God would use such a movie in his signs. It is an important movie that everyone pretty much knows. Anyway, in the 1976 horror movie Carrie, a pig is slaughtered and its blood is drained into a bucket that is then dumped on Carrie at her high school prom. In the 4th century BC, the Greeks came from the west and ruled over Jerusalem. One of the Greek leaders, Antiochus Epiphanes, persecuted the Jews and set up a slaughtered pig on the Temple Mount, an abomination to Jews. Epiphanes was a prophetic foreshadow for the Antichrist, which Bible prophecy says will set up an abomination on the Temple Mount. The name of the movie Carrie hints at Kay Harris, and the plot of the movie is about Carrie's experience at a high school. 3 days before Kay Harris, which hints at Carrie, flew out west to speak at a school, the actress who was nominated for 3 Oscar awards, including her role in Carrie, died. The prolific and famous actress's 3 Oscar nominations confirmed the addition of 3 days to the date of her death on October 14th, to the date Kay Harris visited a school on October 17th, 2023. Piper Laurie was nominated for Best Supporting Actress for her role in Carrie at the 49th Academy Awards, and Kay Harris, as in hinting at Carrie, is the 49th U.S. Vice President. Carrie was doused in pig's blood, and she supernaturally caused a car to explode with her enemies inside. It is predicted that Kay Harris will be bloodied after the engine of her Air Force Two plane explodes. Piper Laurie was also nominated for her role in Children of a Lesser God at the 59th Academy Awards. Kay Harris is predicted to die just days after turning 59 years old. The movie Children of a Lesser God was initially released at the 37th Berlin International Film Festival. The reason why Barack Obama has delivered a number of prophetic speeches in Berlin and why he keeps returning to Berlin is because the excavated Temple of Pergamum is located in the Pergamum Museum in Berlin, which Jesus said in the book of Revelation is the seat of Satan, which makes the premiere of Children of a Lesser God movie in Berlin a sign that points to Satan and Obama, the Antichrist. Kay Harris will be replaced by the Antichrist Barack Obama, and the first movie role for which Piper Laurie was nominated for an Oscar was The Hustler. It was her only nomination for Best Actress. The other 2 were for Best Supporting Actress. The Antichrist who will broker a deal in the Middle East will be a hustler, which is why the actress nominated for 3 Oscars died 3 days before Biden set off for the Middle East in an attempt to broker peace. Carrie used her telepathic powers to lock the students inside the gymnasium, who were then slaughtered in a fire. At a White House press correspondence dinner, the Antichrist Barack Obama made a reference to the Red Wedding scene in the show Game of Thrones, when he joked about locking his Republican enemies inside the room and slaughtering them. The 44th president made this joke about trapping people and slaughtering them on April 30th, 2016, exactly 2 times 30 months before 44 people died when they were trapped in a crush stampede at a religious festival in Israel. This worst civil disaster in Israel's history was in turn exactly 900 days before 200 to 300 people were slaughtered in the explosion at one of 23 hospitals in Gaza, in which 2.3 million people are trapped. This 2 times 30 months, followed by exactly 900 days, is a pairing of 23 and 9 that God uses to confirm the signs and connections and point to the Antichrist, who became the president in 2009 and is predicted to become the president again in 2023. This is astounding, by the way. This connection between the Red Wedding and the trapped people in Gaza and the trapped people in the Crush. Wow. With this exact 2 times 30 months followed by 900 days with 44 in the middle, 44 deaths in the middle. God also pairs 23 and 9 with 44. And this is why in the middle of the 2 times 30 months and 900 days connection were the deaths of 44 people who were trapped. The deaths of 44 people who were trapped on April 30th, 2021 were exactly 90 plus 90 plus 90 days, which is the equivalent of 270 days. After the explosion in the port of Beirut in Lebanon at the storage facility of fertilizer. Okay, 44 deaths pairs with the 90 plus 90 plus 90 days because, again, God pairs 9 and 44 together to confirm the signs and connections, to point to the president who became the president in 2009, the 44th president. Which is why the explosion of the fertilizer plant, and by the way, the explosion in Beirut was on the 44th president's birthday, which is why the explosion of the fertilizer plant, as in fertilizer plant in West Texas, connects with exactly 126 months to the explosion in the Middle East in the zone of interest of the trapped people in Gaza. So there's, in other words, a connection. This is why the fertilizer plant exploded, and as I've been explaining here, connects to the explosion of the fertilizer in Beirut. The Beirut explosion was on the birthday of Obama the Antichrist. And this in turn was exactly 9 plus 9 plus 9 years, 27 years. And again, God repeats a number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning, and the number 9 symbolizes God's judgment. After the famous or infamous bench clearing brawl on Obama's birthday, when Obama's from Chicago, when Chicago White Sox player number 23 charged the strikeout king, Nolan Ryan, on the pitching mound.
Here's Ventura, RBI single in the first. Watch out. Look at this. Robin took exception to the pitch. And went after Nolan Ryan. Wants to start things back up right here. And here's Lamont. And here we go again. I cannot see who is in the middle. Bo is in there. There's somebody drags out. Doug Manzolino. Jeff Schwartz.
Boy, Mickey Hatcher's got a pretty good cut over his right eye, as you can see right there. Boy, this thing's getting ugly out. Got to get these two teams.
9 + 9 + 9 years pairs with the player jersey number 23 for Chicago. And the president, who is from Chicago, also wore jersey 23 and will become the president again in 2023. God uses pitchers on the pitching mound in his signs as symbolism for the Antichrist king on the Temple Mount in Bible prophecy. Arguably, the most important pitcher on the pitching mound is the strikeout king in terms of God's prophetic signs. But there are many, many pitchers on the pitching mound prophetic signs. The name, including Barack Obama, who threw out the first pitch, by the way, in a prophetic Chicago White Sox playoff game, but that's another story. The name Nolan Ryan in Irish means noble little king. The strikeout king, Nolan Ryan, held his high school team's record for strikeouts in a game for 44 years until it was tied twice in the same week. It wasn't even the same year, it was the same week, which was in the year that the 44th president was inaugurated, hence why the strikeout record for 44 years until the year the 44th president was inaugurated. And then it was tied twice in the same week. Ryan's high school record is 21 strikeouts, which is 3 sets of 7. And one of the names of the pitchers who tied him 44 years later is Joshua Land, which is an amazing name. This was because in the book of Joshua, the Israelites were led by Joshua into the promised land where they enacted a symbolic 3 sets of 7 before the walls of security of Jericho collapsed in God's judgment. Hence the 3 sets of 7 for strikeouts for Joshua Land. Amazing. Ryan's career spanned 4 different decades. His career began in 1969, and so he was able to pitch in 4 different decades. And he played for 4 different teams, which hints at the 44th president. All of the teams that he played for were in the 1961 to 1962 expansion years. And the 44th president was born in 1961. The strikeout king's career spanned 27 years, and this infamous brawl in which the player charged him on the pitching mound occurred in his 27th year, which confirms the addition of 27 years to the brawl on Obama's birthday, on Obama's 32nd birthday in 1993, to the Beirut explosion on Obama's birthday on August 4th, 2020. This 27 years connection to August 4th, 2020, in turn connects with 270 days, which hints at 27 also, to the trapped 44 people in the Crush Stampede in Israel. The brawl on Obama's 32nd birthday hints at 32, which equals 4 times 8, and this hints at the 48th president. Hence, the 32nd birthday was highlighted for the future 48th president. The 32nd prime number is 131, and Strong's Greek concordance, so the word in Strong's Greek concordance, the 131st word is the Greek word for blood disease, which is what one gets when they take the CVD thing, which is the mark of the Antichrist, described in Bible prophecy. In the bench clearing brawl, the face of one of the coaches for Dallas was bloodied. His name, Mickey Hatcher, is equal to 129 in simple English gematria, which, if you don't know what gematria is, Roman, Greek, and Hebrew letters are also numbers, and as such, names and words can be converted into a numeric value. When we do the same thing for English, A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, Mickey Hatcher equals 129, and the 129th word in Strong's Greek Concordance is the word that means blood. And this is the guy that had the bloodied face. And there was only one that got bloodied in the big brawl. Dallas, being the capital of evangelicalism, according to the media, mainstream media, in fact, made this brawl between the teams from Chicago and Dallas, symbolism for the present-day civil war between the blue team and conservatives and Christians, and symbolism for the coming bloody genocide by the blue team of conservatives and Christians, represented by Dallas in this sign, which is why it was the Dallas coach that got bloodied. All right, it was just discovered after writing this paragraph for this email, for this video, that the day of the brawl, as I was explaining, was exactly 27 years to the 32nd birthday of Barack Obama, which was the day of the explosion in Beirut that registered a 3-point-something magnitude earthquake around the area. It was felt throughout the Middle East. That was when the fertilizer that was being stored in the port of Beirut in Lebanon exploded. It hinted at the Beirut barrack bombings, which hints at Barack Obama. And that was something I also forgot or failed to mention, is the reason for the prophetic significance of the Beirut explosion was that it hints at the barrack bombings in 1983, which were a prophetic sign that hints at Barack Obama. And I can't get into the connections, but it connects to the United Nations and on and on. Okay, so you'll just have to take my word for it. It is explained in other videos, though. And anyway, that date, August 4th, 2020, is exactly 171 weeks before the date it is predicted that Michelle Obama, as in Michelle Obama, will become the 50th vice president, which is predicted to be on November 13th, 2023, which is again after it is predicted, because this video is being made before November 7th, and it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on November 7th, which will lead to Joe Biden appointing Michelle Obama as his vice president on November 13th, which will be exactly 171 weeks after the Beirut explosion on August 4th, 2020, Barack Obama's birthday. The reason for why 171 weeks is significant is that 171 is the 18th triangular number, and first of all, God uses triangular numbers, but also the number 18, because 18 is 6 plus 6 plus 6, which hints at the Antichrist's number in Bible prophecy, which is 666. And that is why that is an astounding connection. But the other reason why that is an astounding connection is because, again, August 4th, 2020 was exactly 27 years after the 27th career year for Nolan Ryan and the brawl on Barack Obama's 32nd birthday. And the reason why this connects to Michelle, and this is what I just discovered or just realized, and it is amazing, is that the brawl started when the Chicago White Sox player charged the mound, charged Nolan Ryan, as you saw, player number 23, and Barack Obama wore number 23 in high school. And he's from Chicago, and for that matter, so is Michelle Obama. The name of the player is Robin Ventura. The first name of the player is Robin, and God has been using these signs involving the name Robin or Robert or Robertson, because all of the names are Scottish and they are, the etymological root of it is all the same as Robinson, Michelle Obama's maiden name. And that's why this player's name is Robin. It hints at Michelle Obama from Chicago. And that's why it connects with 27 years, or 9 plus 9 plus 9 years exactly, and then exactly 171 weeks to the date it is predicted that Michelle Robinson Obama will become the 50th vice president on November 13th. Wow. God uses records for his signs, and God's number indicating his divine touch upon something is 7. For example, there are 7 colors in a rainbow, 7 notes in a musical scale, 7 metals on which of antiquity that civilization is based upon, 7 objects in the night sky that move, that are visible to the naked eye, 7 continents, and on and on. Nolan Ryan pitched a record 7 no-hitters in his career. The strikeout king, whose name means king, pitched his 7th no-hitter at the age of 44, which confirmed that the Antichrist king is the 44th president. And again, pitchers on the pitching mound symbolize the Antichrist on the Temple Mount in Bible prophecy, and hence why it is astounding that the strikeout king pitched his 7th no-hitter at the age of 44. The 7th no-hitter was pitched in Dallas, which is symbolic of the American church, which God is very displeased with, which is the whole reason primarily for the Antichrist, to test the faith of quote-unquote Christians. Okay, so the 7th no-hitter was pitched in Dallas, and the last of the 27, and the last and 27th out, and 27 hints at 9 plus 9 plus 9 equals judgment. So there's 27 outs in a game. So the last out of the game when he was pitching this 7th no-hitter was a strikeout against Hall of Famer Toronto Blue Jays player number 12. The number 12 symbolizes the church, and this is in Dallas. Roberto Alomar, who struck out swinging on his knee. The strikeout king on the pitching mound is symbolism for the Antichrist on the Temple Mount, and the strikeout swinging on his knee is symbolic of quote-unquote Christians kneeling to the Antichrist and to Satan. And taking the thing is tantamount to doing this.
That's it! Number 7 is in the books. The remarkable Ryan has done it again.
In the Bible, 30 years is symbolic of a king. Joseph and David were made kings at the age of 30 years old. Exactly 30 years after the Strikeout King's 7th no-hitter, Ryan, whose name in Irish means king, was the day of the 44, and he did so, he struck them out at the age of 44, this 7th no-hitter, was the day, exactly 30 years later, was the day of the 44 deaths in the Crush Stampede, and also the day that Hall of Famer Roberto Alomar, the player that he last struck out, swinging on his knee, was cancel cultured by Major League Baseball. This was the day that officially Major League Baseball cancel cultured Roberto Alomar due to the antichrist politics of the left and cancel culture. It is amazing. Exactly 30 years later. Which was in turn, as I said, 900 days before 200 to 300 people were killed in one of 23 hospitals that served 2.3 million trapped in the zone of interest in Gaza, which is 7 days before the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris's plane will be struck by a bird, which is why the Strikeout King's 7th no-hitter was against the Blue Jays, a type of bird. Ryan's 7th no-hitter and prophetic last strike of the game when he struck out on swinging on his knee. Okay, so Ryan's 7th no-hitter and prophetic last strike of the game against a Blue Jay hinted at the 7 days from October 17th to the predicted strike on Harris's plane. And you could also see this too. The explosion at the hospital, 930 years and then 900 days later after the last strike here against the Blue Jay, was induced by a rocket strike. A rocket struck, it was a strike, the hospital. So again, okay, so the 7th no-hitter with the last prophetic strike, 30 years later is the 44 people that were crushed, and he pitched the last strike at the age of 44. And also the same day that Roberto Alomar was cancel cultured, and he struck out Roberto Alomar exactly 30 years earlier. And this in turn is 900 days, and the 44 were trapped, and this in turn is 900 days to the strike of the rocket of the trapped people in Gaza, in the hospital. It's just amazing. And so in other words, what I'm saying is this 7th no-hitter connects to all of this, and then that is in other words, a hint, therefore, for the 7 days addition to October 17th to get the date of the predicted bird strike of Kamala Harris's airplane. The 7th no-hitter ultimately is for confirming the 7 days between the rocket strike and the predicted bird strike. All right. The day of the 44 deaths in the Crush Stampede and the cancel culturing of Roberto Alomar on April 30th, the date 4/30 in 2021, is exactly 1,260 days to the day of the Lord on the Day of Atonement on October 12th, 2024, when Lord Jesus Christ will return as the King of Kings and defeat the Antichrist king on the Temple Mount. Hence the strikeout king on the pitching mound. Connection to this. So in other words, from the strikeout king's prophetic 7th no-hitter at the age of 44, we have 30 years, which symbolizes a king, and Ryan means king also, to the cancel culturing antichrist politics and the 44 deaths in Israel that were trapped, which hints at the coming genocide, trapping of them in the Red Wedding. And then it is simply 1,260 days to the defeat of the Antichrist, the 44th president, on the Temple Mount. So pitching mound 30 years, then 1,260 days to the Antichrist 44th president's defeat on the Temple Mount. And by the way, when the prediction comes to pass, it will prove that the second coming is on the Day of Atonement in 2024. And believe me, I know far better than you why God has given me a voice through this prediction, and it is to prove this. Make no mistake. No more talking about a supposed beginning of the 70th seven in Daniel chapter 9. We are already well inside it. In fact, we are already well inside the final 1,260 days, which began, as I'm saying, with this 44 crush and the cancel culturing of Roberta Malamar. Furthermore, the next day is also the beginning of this 1,260 days, and that's the day of the other extremely prophetic sign, which is when the Space Dragon capsule splashed down. But that's another story. But that also hints at the 1,260 days mentioned in Revelation chapter 12, when it also describes the dragon being thrown down from heaven to earth at the beginning of the 1,260 days. It was, in other words, a sign confirming all of that. And it was known since 2017 that May 1st, 2021 would be the beginning of the 1,260 days, about the dragon being thrown down from heaven to earth. And outer space is the second heaven. And that's why the Space Dragon capsule splashed down on that day. But I'm not even scratching the surface of that. And that's not the point of this video. So let's continue. But what I'm saying is that the 1,260 days has begun, and this is all proving that. Including this prediction will prove this. All right, now... 7 times in Bible prophecy, a period of 1,260 days is mentioned as symbolic of the period of the Antichrist. Hopefully I already mentioned that, but by now you get the idea, if I didn't. The date 430, April 30th, hints at H430, the 430th word in Strong's Hebrew Old Testament Concordance, which is the word Elohim, which means God. And so that would be why the date 430, when the 44 were crushed in the stampede at the religious festival in Israel. August 17th, 2023 was 54 days after the Russian general of the Wagner Group was killed in a plane crash, who prior to this almost began a civil war inside Russia. This hinted at the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, the first black regiment in the Civil War, who fought valiantly at Fort Wagner, and who were unfairly paid compared to the other white northern soldiers as a result of oppressive minority laws. Okay, so the 54 days since at the 54th Massachusetts Regiment. This date I'm talking about, August 24th, 2023, was known ahead of time. It was known also that it was 54 days before the predicted, or before October 17th. And it was known since the spring that this guy Wagner would be somehow a prophetic sign at some point. And then, lo and behold, it was a plane crash because, well, October 17th was thought to be the day of the plane crash 54 days later, and Wagner died in a plane crash. In other words, had I had the foresight, I could have predicted Wagner's death in a plane crash on that particular date. It was so easy to have predicted, but I wasn't thinking about it. Well, anyway, so the white northern soldiers were paid $13 per month, and this hinted at the 13th Amendment that abolished slavery. Likewise, the Antichrist will use money to enforce oppressive minority laws. Food will soon be rationed, and only those who have taken the mark of the Antichrist will be permitted to use digital currency that will be programmed to restrict those who refuse the mark of the Antichrist from buying and selling food. So that's what's hinted at with the 54th Massachusetts Regiment and the story regarding them and money and oppressive minority laws. The theme of the Bible and of life is this slavery and freedom symbolism theme, which is the symbolism in the Civil War and the 54th Massachusetts Regiment. The word Barak in Hebrew means lightning. It is predicted that Barak will replace Harris after her plane will be struck by lightning. Biden departed on his plane for the Middle East trip on October 17th, exactly 540, which hints at the 54th Regiment, days after he hosted the Tampa Bay Lightning hockey team at the White House and made a gaffe referring to the commissioner of the NHL as Gary Batman instead of Gary Bettman. The number 117 symbolizes the mark of the Antichrist, and this is explained in the foundational must-watch video. Harris's crash will be on 10:17 equals. Eclipse peaked at 1:17 p.m. Make sure you watch that other video, okay? Because I'm not going to explain it here. There's so much to it. It's amazing. The number 117 symbolizes the mark of the Antichrist, and Biden's Batman gaffe was 117 months after the Batman movie theater massacre. Mass shootings are symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist, SHOs, right? I said that earlier. I explained that earlier. SHOs in shootings are symbolic of the SHOs of the mark of the Antichrist. The Dark Knight Rises Batman movie massacre in Denver was in turn exactly 42 months. 42 months is mentioned in Bible prophecy 7 times as the period of the Antichrist, which is the equivalent of 1,260 days. They're interchangeable, okay? Because 1,260 days is 42 biblical months, which is made up of 30 days each. Okay, so again, the Dark Knight Rises Batman movie massacre in Denver was in turn exactly 42 months after the Dark Knight rose to power at the 44th president's inauguration, which was in turn exactly 117 months after the Columbine school massacre in Denver, perpetrated by a teenager named Harris, Eric Harris, and another with the initials DK, Dylan Klebold. So that was the reason for that's the reason for the 117 months from the Batman gaffe to the Batman massacre. It's because the Columbine massacre was 117 months before the inauguration of the president. Okay? The Columbine shooting was in turn exactly 12,600 days, which hints at 1,260 days, which is 42 months. And which was also exactly, 12,600 days is the equivalent of exactly 600 plus 600 plus 600 weeks, which hints at 666. And this is 12,600 days, the Columbine massacre, after the birth of K.D. Harris. And that's why the teenagers that did the shooting at the Columbine massacre were named Harris and had the initials DK. It's because K.D. Harris was born exactly 12,600 days earlier. It's amazing. The shooter in the Batman movie massacre was 24 years old, and Biden departed for the Middle East because of the zone of interest of Gaza on the same day that A24, the entertainment company, released the movie trailer for the zone of interest. That's the connection to 24 years old. In other words, connects to the company named A24, and both are connected to slaughter and massacre themes. Biden made his Batman speech gaffe on the same day that Elon Musk, or at the same time that Elon Musk officially secured Twitter for $44 billion. Because Musk tweeted it about this on the Sunday, and then the following day was the day that the Lightning were at the White House and Biden made his Batman gaffe. Okay, so in other words, it's all part of the same sign. Biden made his Batman speech gaffe at the same time that Elon Musk officially secured Twitter for $44 billion in the name of free speech, at the same time that the 44th president delivered his big anti-free speech, quote-unquote disinformation speech at Stanford University in Silicon Valley, which is where Twitter is. At this time of Biden's lightning gaffe and the owner of Tesla's purchase of Twitter for $44 billion, A self-driving Tesla symbolizes lightning because it uses electricity, and Nikola Tesla is famous for his lightning experiments with his lightning coils. This was the same day or same time as I think the crash was the same day as Obama's speech. So anyway, this Tesla vehicle crashed into a plane in Washington state, which hinted at the rise of the Antichrist, Barak meaning lightning. That's what the name Barak means in Hebrew. The rise of him in Washington, D.C. through Harris's plane crash due to lightning. I believe it'll be lightning and a bird strike. Hopefully you got that. Obviously, the ultimate purpose here is to identify the Antichrist, the 44th president, through and his doing away with the Constitution and free speech through the purchase of Elon Musk's Twitter for $44 billion. The $44 billion was for the purpose of pointing to the Antichrist, the 44th president. In my opinion, that should have been clear to everyone. I don't know why it wasn't at the time. It's just so clear, that one. 3 days after the death of the actress, who was nominated for 3 Oscars, including for her role in Carrie, a movie about Carrie's experience at a school and students being trapped and slaughtered, was the day that Kay Harris, which is hinted at with Carrie, spoke with students at a school. This was in Flagstaff, Arizona, a city with a history tied to the historic Route 66 highway that connects Chicago to Los Angeles. The school she visited received its current name in 1966. The Antichrist is from Chicago, and Los Angeles in Spanish is Spanish for fallen angels. The reason why Harris chose to visit Northern Arizona University as her 9th stop on her Fight for Our Freedoms tour is that the school had recently exceeded 25% enrollment of Hispanic students, making it a so-called Hispanic serving institution. This is Antichrist identity politics and a form of Marxism, and this hints at how Route 66 goes through Flagstaff to connect Chicago, the home of the Antichrist, with Los Angeles, which means fallen angels. Route 66 hints at the 66th book of the Bible, in which the Antichrist's number is 666. And the school received its current name in 66. On the date 10/17, Harris's plane landed in Flagstaff, right next to the I-17 highway, which connects Flagstaff to Phoenix, the capital of the 48th state. This is because the date 10/17, the date she landed right next to I-17, and the I-17 highway, hint at the number 117, which is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. It is also predicted that Harris's plane will crash in St. Louis, where the 2017 eclipse passed over at 1:17 p.m., which is also why her plane landed in the 48th state, right next to the I-17 highway. The 49th vice president, and also her flight path to her landing next to the I-17 highway, passed right over St. Louis. That's important there too. The 49th vice president was born exactly 4 years and 9 months before the first American stepped onto the moon. The moon is a giant rock, and in the Bible, rock is symbolism for Christ. The last American, and also the sun symbolizes God the Father, and the sun's light is too bright for us to gaze at, but we can gaze at the sun's light reflected off of the moon, which is why watching for the timing of the moon is important in the Bible and is symbolism for watching for the timing of the Lord's return through his prophetic signs, which also contain moon signs. The last American to step off of the moon symbolized America's departure from Christ. Okay, so the departure of the last American from the moon is symbolism for America's departure from Christ. And this was during the Apollo 17 mission. This is why the two space shuttle disasters were 4 days shy of exactly 17 years apart, and why the two planes struck the two towers on 9/11 17 minutes apart. The current president of Northern Arizona University is the 17th president of the university, and his name is Jose Luis, which hints at St. Louis, Cruz, which is Spanish for cross, Rivera, which is Spanish for river, and this hints at the Mississippi River that runs through St. Louis. In the Bible, the number 13 is symbolic of the Antichrist, who will be the 48th president. Northern Arizona University was founded 13 years before Arizona became the 48th state to join the Union. It was founded on 9/11 in 1899 with 23 students. The Antichrist wore jersey 23 and will become the 48th president in 2023. He first became the president in 2009, and this is hinted at with the year 1899, which pairs with the 23 students to confirm the sign. In Bible prophecy, the Antichrist is said to rule for a symbolic 42 months. 9/11 in 1899, when the school was founded, was exactly 42 years before ground was ceremoniously broken to begin construction of the Pentagon on 9/11 in 1941. The Pentagon cost $1.19 billion in today's dollars, and this too hints at 9/11. It is predicted that when Harris's plane crashes, it will mirror the flight path of Flight 77, because the flight on 9/11, that crashed into the Pentagon. Okay, so Flight 77, which crashed into the Pentagon on 9/11, was a flight from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles. And it is predicted that her flight path will be the same flight path, and that flight path crosses over St. Louis. Although I did know quite a while before I figured that out, that God was pointing to St. Louis for the location for her crash. I didn't figure out St. Louis because of the flight path. But anyway, so her crash, in other words, will be pointing to 9/11. Okay? And by the way, her flight path to Flagstaff was essentially the same flight path from Washington to Los Angeles. If you just go a little further from Flagstaff, you end up in Los Angeles. It's the same flight path. It also passed over St. Louis on October 17th, the prophetic date that God was pointing to big time ahead of time, as we know. All right, where was I here? So 9/11 in 1941, when ground was broken symbolically to begin the construction of the Pentagon. This date was exactly 2 times 30 years before 9/11 in 2001, when Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon. And I don't know if I say this later, but Flight 77 hints at 11 times 7, which hints at 117. And that's also hinted at with the I-17 highway, which she landed right next to. Okay? 2 times 30 years between 9/11 dates, it is hinted at with the initial 23 students at the founding of Northern Arizona University in 1899. Right? So again, from the founding of the university, we have a prophetic, extremely prophetic 42 years, because again, that was the 48th state, and it was 13 years before it was founded and all that. So it's 42 years to the Pentagon, and then 2 times 30 years to 9/11. And there were 23 students in the founding of the university, which confirms the 2 times 30 months. 2 times 30 months is also 60 months. And America's walls of security, its military strength symbolized by the Pentagon, will collapse in God's judgment for the 60 million babies that have been aborted. 9/11 in 2001 was in turn exactly 1,153 weeks before Harris visited the school founded on 9/11 in 1899. And 1,153 is the 191st prime number. And 191 hints at 9/11. All right, so here, the founding of the university on 9/11 in 1899 connects with 42 years and then a prophetic 2 times 30 months or 60 months to 9/11, which in turn connects with the 191st prime number, 1,153 weeks, to the date that Harris visited this university. It's a straightforward 3 steps connection. It's amazing. Amazing confirmation that this is prophetic, her visit to this school in Flagstaff. Okay, all of this confirms the prophetic significance of the school Harris visited. Her 9th, as in symbolic of judgment from God, school on her tour on October 17th, 2023. Northern Arizona University has 7 academic colleges. This confirms the 7 days in between her visit to Northern Arizona University and the date it is predicted that her plane's flight path will mirror that of Flight 77's on 9/11 and will crash on October 24th, 2023. So there you have it. Okay, so that's that. We've established the prophetic significance of the school. The school has 7 academic colleges, and that's why it is 7 days from her visit to the school to the date it is predicted that she will crash. Harris's death in a plane crash will lead to the rise of the Antichrist, and the school has 130 undergraduate programs. 130 hints at 13, and from the Bible, the number 13 is symbolic of the Antichrist. Nimrod, a type for the Antichrist, was the 13th generation from Ham. Haman, another type for the Antichrist, persecuted the Jews on the 2 13th days of the month, and the 2 Antichrists are described in the book of Revelation in chapter 13. Northern Arizona University is also known for its observatory, which was part of the prophetic NASA DART mission, Double Asteroid Redirect Test, a test mission to redirect an asteroid that involved an explosion, by the way, but on the same day that the 2 pipelines exploded, hence the 2 asteroids, because it's a double asteroid. Okay, anyway, that date that this mission climaxed was September 26th, 2022, exactly 9 plus 11 months before the asteroid described in Bible prophecy will hit Earth on May 26th, 2024. And again, this school is all about 9/11. Because again, it was founded on the date 9/11 with 23 students, as I just explained all of that, right? And furthermore, it connected profoundly to the Harris visit, as I just explained, because from the 9/11 date. So, okay, this school is known for its observatory. It was involved in the asteroid redirect mission, which is this supposed attempt to try to learn how to redirect an asteroid so that there isn't an apocalyptic asteroid hit, which is a joke and blasphemy in a way, because God is in control of these things. It is to say In other words, in a way, there is no God. To say such a to believe in such a thing. But anyway, and that climax to that mission, when they exploded the probe onto the asteroid, is exactly 9 plus 11 months to the date that was known a long time ago to be the date that the asteroid will hit Earth. In other words, there's tons more confirmation for this. This one only just was learned yesterday, when the signs that occurred on October 17th were being learned. Okay, Flagstaff, Arizona is deemed by the International Dark Sky Association to be one of 22 dark sky cities worldwide. The number 22 is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist, and a dark sky hints at the Antichrist. So if you've been paying attention, we have all of this Antichrist symbolism with this school, right? Route 66 and everything that I've just been explaining. Well, number 22 is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist, because the inverse of the mark of the Antichrist described in the book of Ezekiel in the Old Testament would have been a Tav mark, and a Tav letter is the last and 22nd letter in the Hebrew alphabet. And the mark of the Antichrist is described in the last book of the Bible, the book of Revelation, which is the 22nd book out of 22 books in the Bible that have a total of 22 chapters. And that's why the number 22 is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist in God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel. And the night sky, the dark night sky, is symbolic, of the Antichrist as well. And furthermore, the asteroid will be coming from the dark night sky. Well, I don't know what I meant by that. Sorry. Kamala Harris visited Northern Arizona University, which has 7 academic programs, 7 days before it is predicted that she will die in a plane crash due to a bird strike on October 24th, 2023. October 24th will be exactly 4 times 44 months after the 44th president delivered his first State of the Union speech on February 24th, 2009, in which he commended Captain Sully for his heroic effort to save the lives of the passengers on his plane that was struck by a bird before he ditched his plane into the Hudson River. Captain Sully studied at University of Northern Colorado, which is what Northern Arizona University hints at. Harris's visit to Northern Arizona University with its 7 academic programs, 7 days before her predicted plane crash due to a bird strike, hints at the 4 times 44 months connection from Harris's predicted bird strike plane crash to the 44th president's first State of the Union speech, known for its standing ovation for Captain Sully, who saved his plane after a bird strike. And this is confirmed with the fact that Captain Sully studied at University of Northern Colorado. It confirms the connection between Harris and her visit to Northern Arizona University and her predicted plane crash due to a bird strike, because Captain Sully studied at University of Northern Colorado. Of course, these are the 2 states in the 4 corners. I just stumbled us on something there. The 4 corners states. And the day that she visited the 4 corners was the day of the 4 horns. The 4 horns sign, the 4-party summit that was canceled. And she visited the 4 corners. Furthermore, she was in the northern part of the state, which is closer to the 4 corners than the southern part, because Arizona is in the southwest corner of the 4 corners states. Colorado is in the 4 corners states as well. And Captain Sully studied at the University of Northern Colorado. But we have this connection here with the 4 corner states. Oh, that's so amazing. That's so amazing. because it times with the four-party summit cancellation and the four horn sign to Zechariah. Wow. I wonder if the four craftsmen could be interpreted as, going to university to learn a craft. No kidding, it is. Because think about it. Captain Sully is known for his aviation skills. He actually represented some some national aviation association as well. He's a very highly skilled craftsman with his craft, which is flying planes. And, well, universities are for learning a craft. Most people today don't go to learn a trade, but nonetheless, there are many colleges that do. And furthermore, that's a place of learning, to learn a craft, whether it's be a literal hands-on trade, such as flying a plane or something else. But anyway, I think we also have the four craftsmen symbolism in the universities in the Four Corners states. I think that's what that is. Wow. Okay. Again, ultimately, this points to the fourth president here too, and the first State of the Union speech of the 44th president. All right. So where was I here? The connection between Northern Arizona University and Captain Sully is further confirmed through the 9/11 connections with Northern Arizona University, which I have been explaining, and the 9/11 symbolism in Captain Sully's plane crash. Sully landed his plane in the Hudson River right next to Lower Manhattan, where the events of 9/11 took place. Furthermore, on 9/11, people escaped Lower Manhattan in boats across the Hudson River. Oh, if I recall, I looked into this a couple of years ago, and right where he first hit the water was parallel to where the Twin Towers would have been. I'm pretty sure that's the case. Anyway, okay, so let's see. After Captain Sully's, furthermore, on 9/11, people escaped Lower Manhattan in boats across the Hudson River. After Captain Sully's plane landed in the Hudson River, all 155 passengers survived in rescues in boats. These rescues in boats from a disaster are symbolic of the rescue of Noah and his family in the ark from the flood judgment. The ark is a big boat. In the account of the flood judgment, in the book of Genesis, chapter 7, the flood waters increased for 40 days. This is why exactly 40 days after the rescue of the passengers and Captain Sully in boats on the Hudson River, next to where the 9/11 judgment occurred, was the standing ovation for Captain Sully after the Antichrist Obama commended him in his prophetic first State of the Union speech. The State of the Union's relationship with God is very bad, and this is why Harris will die in a plane crash exactly 4 times 44 months later, which will lead to the return of the 44th president. So if you got that, it's amazing. 40 days from the crash into the Hudson River with the rescue boats to Obama's speech, which in turn connects with 4 times 44 months to the date it is predicted that she will crash. The 49th vice president's plane crash is predicted to be 4 years and 9 months after the prophetic rare 3.8 magnitude earthquake in downtown Nazareth. In Greek gematria, Jesus equals 888, which is what is hinted at with the 3.8 magnitude earthquake. It hints at 3 8s, and of course, Jesus is from Nazareth. And that earthquake, the Jesus of Nazareth earthquake, was exactly 9 years and 11 months after Obama commended Captain Sully for his heroism in the event on the river that pointed to 9/11. That's why the 9 years and 11 months connection from the day that Obama commended Captain Sully for his heroism on the river that pointed to 9/11. And again, that earthquake in turn connects with 4 years and 9 months to the predicted death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash due to a bird strike, which is why Captain Sully's plane crashed, the death of the 49th U.S. Vice President due to a bird strike 4 years and 9 months after the Jesus of Nazareth earthquake. All 155 passengers survived Captain Sully's plane crash, and Harris's plane is predicted to crash in St. Louis near the Mississippi River and the I-55 highway, which hints at 155, that connects St. Louis to Chicago, the home city of the Antichrist. In fact, Northern Arizona University is the closest major university to the Four Corners Monument. Okay, so the Four Corners is interesting. This is the location in the U.S. where 4 states align in a square. It's the 4 corners. They come together. You could stand in one spot and basically stand in 4 states at the same time. It's called the Four Corners region of the U.S., and it is amazing that God pointed to this on the day of the 4-party summit. All right? And the 4 craftsmen, which, as I explained, I think is alluded to with universities. Okay, so in fact, this Northern Arizona University is the closest major university to the Four Corners Monument. In other words, the location where these 4 states come together. According to Google Maps, Flagstaff is 227 miles from the Four Corners Monument. 227 is the 49th prime number. And it was the 49th vice president that visited Flagstaff, which is 227 miles from the Four Corners Monument, which is the 49th prime number. And 227 hints at 22 divided by 7, which is shorthand for pi, God's mysterious transcendental number that he has baked into his creation. This is amazing. Biden's 4-party summit was canceled as he flew to the Middle East on the day that Harris flew to the Four Corners. This is a big part of this symbolism in these signs on October 17th. Her flying to the Four Corners as Biden was flying to the 4-party summit that was canceled. Oh, and I just realized that another story on this day was Alec Baldwin's SHO with his gun in Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is also located close to the Four Corners Monument. This, too, confirms this Four Corners symbolism for the purpose of pointing to the 4 horns, 4 horsemen, and 4 craftsmen in Zechariah chapter 1. That is amazing. So we had another second witness, which was, again, this Alec Baldwin sign, because it is also a Four Corners sign. Santa Fe is in northern New Mexico, and the closest, I guess, large city, if you will, in New Mexico to the Four Corners. All right. It just happened to be on the same day as Harris was close to the Four Corners, which isn't a coincidence. In other words, God is pointing to the Four Corners of the U.S., the Four Corners region. The horseman is among the myrtle trees, and this was exactly 37 weeks, which hints at 3 sets of 7, the number 37, after the spy balloon crossed the border wall of security, and then, which hence the 3 sets of 7, because of the book of Joshua and the 3 sets of 7 when they marched around the walls of security of Jericho. Okay, so the horseman is among the myrtle trees, and these signs, including the Four Corners signs here, were exactly 37 weeks after the spy balloon crossed the border wall of security and then was struck by a rocket just offshore of Myrtle Beach. The day that the balloon crossed the border wall of security was the day that Alec Baldwin was first charged in Santa Fe, which is in the Four Corners region. And 37 weeks later, a rocket struck the hospital, just as the rocket struck the balloon, similar to the rocket that struck the balloon, and similar to the bird that Will predicted to strike Harris's plane. Okay, so we have the two rocket strikes, the balloon and the hospital. The balloon crossed into the U.S. 37 weeks and then was shot down by a rocket, and 37 weeks after it crossed into the U.S. was the rocket strike on the hospital, followed by another 7 days to the strike of Harris's plane by a bird, and Harris is the 49th vice president, 7 days, and then 49, as in 49th vice president, hints at 7 and then 7 times 7, because 49 is 7 times 7. Okay, I just woke up. I forgot to add that 227 miles is the 49th prime number, and Harris is the 49th vice president. I just mentioned that. Actually, this 49th vice president, or rather the 49th vice president, visited Northern Arizona University with its 7 academic colleges in Flagstaff, which is the 49th prime number, miles away from the Four Corners Monument. And 49 is 7 times 7, which therefore gives us 3 sets of 7. The 49th VP, vice president, and 7 academic colleges also give us 3 sets of 7. Again, the 3 sets of 7 in Joshua are in fact a 7 followed by a 7 times 7, because they marched around the walls of security of Jericho once per day for 7 days. And then on the 7th day, they marched 7 times while blowing 7 trumpets. It was a 7 followed by a 7 times 7. And that's what we are talking about here with the 7 days from the 7 academic colleges to the death of the 49th vice president, as 49 is 7 times 7. This is also the same as the Omer count from Passover to Pentecost. It is a symbolic 7 days from Passover to First Fruits, the Feast of First Fruits. And I say symbolic because it's different every year, because it depends on watching the moon. But then from First Fruits, it is 7 times 7 days. So it's a 7 and then a 7 times 7, which is actually the reason why the 3 sets of 7 in Joshua too, because the timing of the events in Joshua are in fact parallel with the Omer count, but that's another story. And this was exactly 37 weeks after the balloon crossed the wall of security. I'm talking about Harris in visiting the 7 academic colleges of the Northern Arizona University. Okay, this was exactly 37 weeks, which is at 3 sets of 7, after the balloon crossed the wall of security, the northern border, in other words, and the Santa Fe Baldwin sign, which was when he was first charged in Santa Fe, near the Four Corners Monument. Okay, so we've got, again, as I was saying, Four Corners Monument to Four Corners Monument. In fact, we have Alec Baldwin sign to Alec Baldwin sign with the 37 weeks. Four corners being hinted at, 37 weeks apart, which confirms the connection to the balloon, in other words, 37 weeks earlier, and the strike from the rocket. All of this further validates the relevance of the 7 academic colleges, and therefore confirms the relevance of adding 7 days to October 17th and her visit to 7 academic colleges to get October 24th, 2023, the predicted date of the 49th vice president's crash, which will also be a 3 sets of 7. 7 days, and then the 49th vice president's crash is a 7 and then a 7 times 7, because 49 is 7 times 7. It all really makes sense now. Okay, so What I was saying, all of this was in fact for confirming 7 days to the death of the 49th vice president, 7 times 7. That's why all of these connections here involving 3 sets of 7. All right, this is only halfway done. Make sure you watch part 2. In part 2, I will explain the amazing signs on October 24th and the amazing signs on November 7th that revealed that the date that it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash will be on January 7th, 2024. It is an amazing video also. Make sure you watch part 2 of this Gaza explosion video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Please leave a like and upvote the video. And once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more. Don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, TrumpPrediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the BitChute.com or the Odyssey.com channel. And do it now in case you aren't able to later.